everyone, and welcome back to No Place Like Home. I'm Producer Rach, and I'm here with Kath.
Hello.
Hi,
Producer Rach on the mic. Not ghostwritering today.
Back again. Just filling in for Larissa briefly. Hopefully we'll have her back for the next couple of episodes, but we'll see how we go. We did mention this before. She's fine. She's doing really well, just resting and having a little break. They're big days podcasting for us, so we've encouraged her to take a little break when she needs to.
We have, and she's listened. So we're coming with the real good juice right now for this episode.
Yep. We're going to talk about what you should know and what you should do before baby arrives. So the prenatal checklist, all of the things that we wish we knew and we wish we did in hindsight. We're giving you all of the tools and the knowledge that you might need if you are planning or preparing yourself.
And hopefully it's a bit more than what I did, which was read nothing and do nothing other than attend my allocated appointments and hope for the best.
Cross your fingers and your toes. Hope that everything goes well.
Exactly.
Yeah, so basic things. So learn about the birth process and the different outcomes, including possible emergency interventions, or not even emergency interventions, just interventions full stop. Part of having a birth plan is very much understanding what the possibilities are and if things don't necessarily go to plan, what you are and uncomfortable with, because you'll be asked those questions in the heat of the moment. Are you okay with having an episiotomy? Would you like an epidural? All of those things. And if you haven't thought about it beforehand and you don't really know the implications of those decisions, you're not going to be making an informed choice in that moment.
I think the education element of it, you can take as far as you want to. I spoke to someone just yesterday about they were still pregnant and coming into the space very soon. And they said, I've done none of the classes, I've read none of the books. And I was like, amazing. There'll be no surprises that you're, frightened to learn about or not. But other people need that. Yeah. So educate yourself as much as you feel that your mind can take. So
it's not necessarily just about educating yourself. It's about educating your partner or support person who's going to be in the room for you. Because if you've been in labour for 10 hours, maybe longer, maybe less, and you're tired and in pain and struggling, having someone there who really understands where you're at, what you want, and what you need in that moment and is able to advocate for you, that's the bit you want. That's the bit you need. And that's where that education really is important, because you don't want the person there making decisions for you, not really understanding what that means.
Yeah, so. I think one of the biggest things that we know people focus on is so heavily around the birth. What I love most about this checklist is that it educates a little bit, take what you need to from the birth process, but there's a lot of other things that you need to think about around that. So
100%.
The next part to think about is understanding what your postpartum needs are. If I could talk to people about this before they actually hit their postpartum, I think we're lucky that sometimes we do get to have those conversations. But it's a bit more than filling your freezer.
Yes.
Sure, that's fab. But who is going to be sort of caring for you in those early days? And
I know I've certainly learned a lot from listening to this podcast for the last 2 years in the producer role. The fact that bleeding can last for 6 weeks postpartum and it needs to be monitored. I didn't know that before listening to this podcast. Rest is so important for yourself to be able to function. Nutrition, knowing about the possible emotional shifts and what that looks and feels like and how to support yourself through that. All of those postpartum products that you're unsure about. I mean, talking to family and friends and what they used and what helped, whether it's, buying the postpartum nappies for yourself, or the ice packs or whatever it might be. Knowing what the possibilities are and what's available to support yourself through that is really important.
I think as well, a big one for us or in general is feeding and what that looks and feels like. And a lot of people come into prior to having their babies during their pregnancy and think that they want to go one way or the other. But one of the biggest pieces of advice that I could definitely say would be just to educate yourself about what it looks like to go down whatever route it is that you think is going to happen, but be open to what that might look like if it didn't happen for you. So
I remember in one of the podcasts, and I can't remember who said it now, but that breastfeeding is natural, yes, but it's also a learned skill. And engaging with a IBCLC who can help you learn that skill in the early days, whether it's help with latching or positions or any of that stuff, even if you are doing it well, there's a possibility that you could be doing it better and making it more comfortable and possibly enjoyable for you and the baby. And it's just about seeking that support early, not waiting until you're really in crisis before you take that step. So what are those support services that are available, and where do you find them? Have that checklist and list of phone numbers on the fridge prior to having your baby. Yeah,
because who's finding those in the heat of it? Not many people.
100%.
I think that another really important part about understanding what some of those needs might be is making sure, again, that you talk to your partner about what that looks like, whether you're the birthing person or not. Being on the same page about what those first few weeks might look like. And no one can actually predict what it looks like, whether you've had a baby before or not. But just having those conversations about, what those vulnerable days will look like and, having some understanding about when this happens, I will need you to help me with this. Or if this happens, it is that advocate that sits with you who's your support person. So
and setting expectations for each other, like practical, emotional, all of those things. So who's organising the meals and bringing the meals and cooking the meals, who's doing the laundry, who's managing visitors, all of those practicalities of the early postpartum period, as well as, all of those support services, getting to and from appointments, at what point we're going to book that, if you're booking it prior to giving birth, if you've known you've struggled before, or if you're worried about your pelvic health, all of those things, and that short list of numbers we spoke about. So you can get some of those things from your maternal child health nurse, your GP. There's also a really handy list, which I will tag in the show notes for this as well, but it's pregnancy-birth-and-baby.org.au. There's a pregnancy helpline numbers, just a full directory on there with a heap of different numbers. It includes Panda and all of those support services that you're probably already familiar with.
They used to be on the back of the little green books. Could be showing my children's age when I'm talking about the little green books, but assumably they're still readily available if people are looking. But I think from one of the biggest things that we do in the space, and certainly those conversations I'm having with people before they arrive, are about their support services and their support network. So that can be exactly those people who are in the broader community and, what they're good for and when you might use them. But it's also as simple as knowing who you might call if you're a little bit lonely, or who could you call to come and take bub while you have a cry, or who's that person that you're going to be able to walk with and actually vent the day or share an experience with. So knowing who is in your support network and trying to identify who they could be beforehand, knowing that sometimes those things change, but just having a bit of an idea about who those people might be is super important in pre-birth, really.
Yeah, absolutely. And making a mental health plan. we've spoken about it so much on this podcast, that mental health checkup should be part of prenatal care, understanding your risk factors, understanding what baby blues looks like compared to sort of tipping over something more acute or more serious that might need extra support. Being proactive with your mental health is such an important step and can make all of the difference if you do find yourself struggling in the early days of postpartum, to have those relationships already there.
I think I know that a previous conversation that we had on the podcast with Edna spoke about how it's better to work in a preventative space. We absolutely know that to be true. So having, your people that like you could use, if like whether it be a psychologist or whether it's your GP that you really trust, that can actually see a change in your behavior or your mental state and know how to take that next step further if required. Equally, it could be your partner, just knowing that, okay, things are changing here. Like, let's check in.
Yeah, but knowing that 1 in 5 mums and 1 in 10 dads suffer with postnatal anxiety and depression. So just as important for dads or non-birthing parents to have those mental health supports in place as well as mum, because partners are 50% more likely to suffer with depression and anxiety if mum does as well. All the things I've learned on this podcast.
You're an absolute plethora of knowledge there, right?
Another big thing after having babies, the return to work.
It's like great to know that that's what you might want to do before you leave. Also knowing that it can change, whether it be that you thought that you were going to go back to work at 6 months, but 5 months rocks around and the fear of actually going back is, I absolutely cannot do that. Or maybe you plan to go back later and all of a sudden you feel really ordinary about the thought of it being so far away. I think it's good to have a plan. Equally, it's great to know that communicating that the plan may change is equally as important.
Yeah. And not just for mum, for dad as well. Like if all of a sudden you've had both parents at home and then you're on your own, that can feel really confronting as well. So do you stagger the return to work? What are the hours going to look like? Who's going to be available during that time? And equally, if you had decided you want to return to work after a short amount of time, and then once you're there, you go, actually, I'm not ready for this yet. What's the contingency plan? And having something in place to understand the other stresses as well. What's the cash flow going to look like? What does your paid parental leave look like? What do your government entitlements look like? And having those things prepared, because that can feel it's overwhelming on a good day without everything else going on. So
it's one of those things, planning the return before the leave feels a bit weird, but it's just the truth of good preparing and feeling more empowered by, that you actually have control of the decisions that you're making. So certainly making sure that they're not things that have to be set in stone, but they definitely have to be things that you think about and consider before you drop off into parent land.
Yes. Other things might be, sleep routines and what your values are as parents. You don't want to find out once you're already sort of in the depths of parenting that your values and what you thought you wanted as parents is not aligning with your partner. It's easy to get those things on the table before you have kids rather than sort of working through those conflicts once baby's already here. So having those tough conversations really early days, it's like that prenatal checklist. As soon as you start deciding you want to conceive or in the early days of pregnancy, like getting on the same page with everyone and making sure that even other caregivers or support people like your mum and dad, so baby's grandparents, know what your expectations are, because families can be tough.
They can be, and it's inevitable that someone will do something just to razz you up. It's not what you like to do, whether it be the person that lives in your house and shares that role or a grandparent. But agree. I think as well, just having those really tough conversations in general. But also, again, like knowing that it's okay if everything turns for you. If prior to having your bub, you're like, yes, sleep is our most important thing and we will sleep train our child. But then you see this sweet, sweet baby and you decide, how could I ever let them cry? Like, how could I ever let them be apart from me? Co-sleeping is what we're going to do. So knowing that things can change on the frequent.
I've heard people say, my kid won't have a dummy and my baby won't be sleeping in the same room as us. How quickly that can change.
It can. Let's just be gentle on ourselves. Yes. I think all of these conversations are really important to have, and they're really great to know that you've got them in the back of your mind. And they're conversations that you've had with your loved ones to make sure that, you know, I'm not suggesting that you necessarily go and talk to every single person in your life about every one of these details, but certainly the person that you're going to share the responsibility of parenting with.
Yeah.
Knowing that full well this could all flip on its head and be completely opposite, or maybe it's going to be exactly how you planned.
Yeah. And the rules aren't hard and fast. There's no right or wrong way to parent, and what works for one is not necessarily going to work for the next person. So be gentle and kind to yourself, and set realistic expectations for these things, because if things don't go exactly to plan one day, that's okay.
Yeah.
And
this is a lovely guide to start off some awesome conversations and, you know, hopefully help to have a bit more of a focus on some of the stuff that happens afterwards rather than just planning that dream birth and filling your freezer with some meals, which is also very important. But
knowledge is power, and the more you know about what to expect in those early days postpartum, the more you can prepare yourself to deal with that once you're in the thick of it.
Amazing. Hopefully this has been a knowledge-filled session for all.
We'll add some links in the show notes for you if you're looking for any of the things we've spoken about. They'll be linked there. Thanks so much, Kath.
Thanks, Rach.
This podcast represents the opinions of our hosts and their guest speakers. Views and opinions expressed in the podcast are our own and do not represent that of our places of work. This podcast is for informational purposes only, and content here should not be taken as medical or professional advice. Please consult your healthcare professional for any personal recommendations and medical care. While we make every effort to ensure that the information we are sharing is accurate, based on the best available information at the time of recording, we will welcome any comments, suggestions or feedback via our website, contact form, home.com.au/contact. Names and details of personal experiences may have been changed to allow anonymity and privacy. To join the conversation, join us on social media at Home Postpartum.